and welcome to another episode of the Greater Culture Podcast, part of our Meet the Member series. And today we're going to get a chance to talk to not only a member, but also Coach Ashley Frank. So Ashley, thanks for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Excited to learn a little bit about your journey and how CrossFit has made a difference. Also then now being a coach, but for the folks who might not know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I grew up kind of moving all over the place, mostly within the Midwest. Got into gymnastics early and kind of carried that with me. And it was just a way to meet friends and have some consistency in life. Then I got into coaching and teaching later on. So that's been fun to kind of carry over into CrossFit once I started after college. Didn't quite have an avenue for gymnastics anymore. So the logical step was getting into CrossFit, which had some gymnastics built into it. And then eventually decided to take on coaching.
Yeah. And gymnastics is such an interesting sport. The more I continue to learn about it, of how young people start doing it and how far you can progress with it. So how long of an experience was gymnastics for you?
Yeah, so I started when I was 4 and then did it competitively all throughout high school. And then even in high school, my coaches were like, are you going to go do it in college? And I'm like, it was just a big commitment. And I was like, I'd rather focus on like school and education and just do it for fun. So the college I did go to had like a club team. So it was still, we went to meets, but we didn't have a coach. It was just kind of like a go into a gym, do your own thing with a group of college kids, and then take yourself to the meets and have fun. And so it was more just for like staying active than it was for the competitive aspect of it, but it was still fun. Did it through all of college. And then after that, it's kind of hard to find like an adult gymnastics, but yeah.
What events did you get to do? Did you specialize or did you do all of them for the women's side?
Yeah, I did all of them. So bars, beam, floor, and vault for females.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you're very tall with long limbs. And
Yes.
I feel like usually when you see somebody who's a gymnast, they're very, very short with like short limbs. Did that come into play at some point in time along the journey of like, oh, wow, like now I'm all of a sudden in a different body shape than what you might typically see for gymnastics?
Yeah. So I was always very short as a kid. Up until like my sophomore year of high school, I was like, when you walk into a gymnastics meet, you line up from like shortest to tallest and your whole team marches in. I was always at the front. And then my sophomore year, I had a huge growth spurt and went to like the very back of the line. And that was a difficult year because your balance just gets thrown off. So I was like, couldn't stay on the beam. My flips were like all over the place. And I'm like, this needs to like level out. And so eventually I like figured out my new body as I had adjusted and grown so much. But that growth spurt made it difficult.
Yeah, I was curious because I feel like anytime you see a tall gymnast or something like that, you're like, you look out of place here. But that's fun to hear that experience. And so along that journey, at what point in time did like working out or fitness or things like that come into play? Was that kind of like a middle school, high school type of thing? Or was it like after you were done competing? Like when did you start realizing like, okay, there's stuff I'm doing on the mat, but then maybe I'm doing some training outside?
So I guess throughout gymnastics, like in our practice, we always had like a 30-minute like strength piece. It was usually at the very end. So in high school, that was like, we had a coach, but she also taught like weightlifting outside of us. So she brought us into a lot of like the weightlifting and different like body movements and training, pull-ups, like all of the things within that as well. So we always had that. And then in the summers, we focused a lot more on like building new skills and then the strength piece too. And then when competition season came around, it was more like routines and like focusing in on like technique. So I would say like it started young because it was always just like a part of gymnastics. And then once I got into college, I like would go and do practice and whatnot, but then would also like go to the gym and work out as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And so when you hit college and it became maybe not as competitive, but more of the recreational thing, did your perspective change and shift, or were you still very like in it of I'm going to train, I'm going to treat this like it's my sport? Or...
It was much more relaxed.
It was
hard to self-motivate without a coach. And actually Billy and I met in college gymnastics, like at the team. And we were the only two on the team who were like pretty competitive. Everybody else was just like, hey, this is my first time. Let's come try gymnastics. And it's like, was very scary watching some of the things that they would try and had never done gymnastics in their life before. So we would kind of help coach and push each other. But I definitely like had a falling off point because it's just, I think we were only going 3 days a week and it was only for 2 hours versus like in high school, it was 6 days a week for 3 to 4 hours a day. So just the intensity like dropped a ton and you like try to maintain some skills, but it was just a lot more for fun.
Yeah. Is that when you started to pick up working out outside of the gymnastics on your own, was in college, kind of figuring out and navigating it?
Yes. Yeah. So I had like a few friends and roommates who we'd be like, okay, we're going to get up and go to the gym together. And so usually on days that like we didn't have gymnastics, I would try and go and do whether it was cardio or some lifting of weights. I didn't really get too much into like barbell then, but more just like kettlebell, dumbbell, those types of like free weights activities.
And then when you graduated, did you go right into teaching and education, or was there any detours along the way?
Nope. So graduated, got a job first year out of college, went right into teaching, taught 4th grade for I think 2 years, and then moved down to first for a few years before moving down here.
Yeah. And what brought you to the North Carolina area here?
Billy's job.
Billy's job did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you've been a first grade teacher pretty much since you've moved down here.
So I moved down here. I did 1 year in 2nd grade because that was just like the position that was open, and then was able to move to first after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did your health and fitness look like transitioning from college to life after? Because I always think it's fascinating when people who have an athletic background, they're in it for the sport, then they kind of try and figure it out, and then all of a sudden it's like, now you're in the real world and you don't have this regimented schedule or the need to go train or eat a certain way, and it's like, what do I do? So what was that journey like for you when you got out of college and it was like real world teacher and living life now?
Yeah, so I took probably like a year off. I didn't really do much of anything. With like your first year of teaching, it's just a lot. I spent a lot of time at school, late nights, just kind of figuring out the curriculum and just getting used to everything. So there wasn't a ton of time to do it. And then my 2nd year, I was like, okay, I felt a little bit more confident, have a little bit more free time. And that's when I started looking for gyms and found the CrossFit gym that I started at, not too far away from my house. So I went and tried it out, loved it, did it for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. Then COVID hit. And so then it was like, okay, nobody can come into the gym, and they like posted videos and you can do it at home. I can't keep up. Like, we have very little equipment, and I'm like, I'm just not motivated to do it by myself. So stopped for a little bit, then actually moved, bought a house still in Ohio, and it was further away from the gym. So once everything opened back up, I was like, okay, I need to find a new gym. I don't know that I'm going to go back to that one just because it was further away. Didn't end up going back to a gym. So I was probably out of CrossFit for 2 or 3 more years after that, and then moved down here with Billy. And that's when we ended up, we're like, okay, we're going to find a gym together. Like, let's join. I want to get back at it. He had lived down here for like a year before I had moved down, and he had a gym in Raleigh that he had gone to. And he's like, I still want to keep at it. And I'm like, I want to get back into it. So like, let's find something. And so that's when we came here, which was before it was Greater Culture, and started our journey back into it.
Yeah. What was it about CrossFit at that first gym that drew you in, that you were like, I really want to do this, or I want to make this the way I train?
Yeah, I just love like the group aspect of CrossFit. I have a hard time like sticking to a workout unless I have somebody to do it with me. So in college, that was like, hey, let's grab a friend, and I would make up a workout and we would do it together, and it would be great. I just need somebody to push me. Otherwise, I'll just like slack off and be like, meh, I don't really need to do this. Like, so the group aspect of it and like the community feel of, okay, hey, people are depending on me to be there, and it would just help me to be more consistent. And then I liked the gymnastics aspects in it. Like, okay, cool. I still get to swing from bars and do handstands and things like that.
Yeah. I think when people meet somebody who has a gymnastics background, they get really jealous, because that for a lot of people is the hardest thing of CrossFit, is to learn how to do a pull up or how to kip or how to kick upside down.
Yeah.
And so having that foundation coming in, what was your experience like? Because when those things were programmed, you were probably like, this is easy, like I can do all this. But there might have been some other movements where you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So what was your journey like as a former gymnast coming into CrossFit?
Yes. So the first gym that I had joined actually had like a foundations where they like broke down all of the like every piece that you learn. And so they had like kind of tested to see where I was at. And they're like, we definitely need to focus more on barbell aspects than gymnastics aspects. They're like, you've got everything else. And And so that was like an interesting way to start, because it was like we just started with PVC and it was training like each day. I think it was 2 weeks, and it was like each day we focused on like a different movement. And then I had like a mini Metcon. And I remember being so sore those first 2 weeks. I'm like, I can't move. Like I didn't lift any weights and I still can't move. And they're like, just keep coming, it'll get better. And so I did, like stuck with it, then moved into like the real classes after those 2 weeks of foundations, and was like sore for like probably a good month and a half. And then my body finally was like, oh, okay, this is how we're moving now, and figured it out. But, yeah, definitely learning barbell technique and form was where I struggled. The gymnastics piece kind of kicked in, and pull-ups and toes to bar and all of those things had been things that I had been exposed to in the past. So those were like, oh, cool, this is the easy part. Yeah. But like the snatch, especially like the technique and how to like hit your hips and not keep the bar, or keeping the bar close to you. Like it took me a while to get down to the mechanics where I like felt comfortable and confident doing them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And along the journey then, did you ever get like a competitive itch of like, oh, I'd love to do like local competitions, or like, you know, just the class experience? Because I find former athletes, they are drawn in for the community experience, and they're like, wait, you can like compete in this? And then like, they're like, oh, I want to do that too. So did you get that itch at all?
Yes, I did like 2 or 3 like team competitions up in Ohio. There was like a group, and they're like, hey, we need a 4th. And I'm like, sure, like I'll try it. And so that was a lot of fun. Definitely something that I enjoyed up there. We haven't been here for very long. And the transition between gyms, I feel like now there's a lot more people at the same level that I'm at, where at the gym before it was like, okay, there was 2 of us that like maybe we could team up, but we didn't have enough to do like a group of 4 or something like that.
Yeah. It's funny to see even just the evolution of the competitive space, where there's so many levels now, like you said, of like from beginner to like intermediate to RX to elite, and finding people you enjoy competing with who are similar levels, it can be challenging. And so being away from CrossFit and then coming back to it, did you notice any like changes or any differences of like got really into it for a couple of years, stepped away for a little bit? When you came back, was it kind of like riding a bike, like it was like you just never had left?
Yes and no. Like I still definitely enjoyed it and loved it and like wanted to be here, but I definitely like lost a lot of fitness over those years. So it was back at like, okay, starting back at the basics and like building up my strength and cardio again. And I feel like even within like, I guess you guys have been here for 2 years now. It's crazy to think that.
Yeah.
Even within the last 2 years, I feel like I've still continued to grow a lot, just with the programming and coaching and everything here. Mm-hmm. So it's fun to just always continue to try and improve, regardless of if that's like what aspect of it you're focusing on.
Yeah. And talk to us a little bit then of how CrossFit and fitness and nutrition even fits into your daily lifestyle, because being a teacher, you know, pretty standard in terms of your work day, but also teaching first graders is pretty exhausting. So tell us a little bit about how you come to manage fitness and working out, and even how you eat and things like that to support your lifestyle.
Yeah, so about a year ago, I got more into nutrition and just kind of figuring out like what I'm missing, what needs to be improved. I always felt like I ate fairly healthy, but I was always like heavy into protein and like loved my carbs, but veggies and fruit occasionally, but they weren't a big thing. And then going down that like path of nutrition, I realized like how much that actually really plays into how you're feeling and the energy you have and your vitamins and minerals. So within the last year, I've made quite a bit of adjustments just with like what I'm eating. Like I said, I never felt like really ate bad. I just wasn't eating the right things. So I feel like that has kind of helped a lot. We do a lot of meal prep. So I, like on a normal day, wake up, make breakfast, I'll pack my lunch, have that, then I'll after work, come and usually try to work out at least 3 days a week. And then I've started coaching, so coaching about 2 days a week. But I just feel like once I get to the gym, like I might not always want to go, but after I do it, I feel so much better. I have more energy. I just feel like the day feels lighter. So it's definitely something that, although it's not always like, okay, yeah, this is what I really want to do right now. Like once I get to the gym, I'm like, no, I'm glad I came. I'm glad I did it. I feel better now. But yeah, so I just have been adding a lot more fruits and vegetables and trying to continue to eat protein, but that part's never been an issue. Yeah. So,
did you notice any major changes when you made that shift of like the veggies and fruits? Because I think a lot of people maybe feel similarly, like, I think I eat okay, like I try and make right decisions. You see so much information out there on the internet now, and it's like, I think I'm doing the right thing. But when you made a very conscious effort, did you notice a change in how you felt, how you moved, how you recovered, all those things?
yeah, I definitely like felt like I became a lot more lean. Like it was one thing that it's like the weight on the scale has never really changed, but just like my body physique, when I made those changes and added in a lot more of the fruits and veggies, I was like, wow, I feel like I've like trimmed down and put on more muscle, which is always nice to see. But yeah, and I mean, energy kind of came and went. I've always been somebody who's just required a lot of sleep. So I feel like stress kind of played a big role in that too. But if you eat right and are moving, then it helps to manage stress too.
Yeah. And so along the way, CrossFit, probably 4 or 5 years under your belt. And then really kind of happenstance came up of an interest in coaching, because I didn't know that you were interested in coaching, but I know you helped coach a lot of our folks with gymnastic movements when you having that background, which is always really great. But it kind of came up of there was an interest in coaching. And so was that something that kind of just came up for you, or over the years you were like, this might be something I might enjoy? Or talk to us about how the idea of maybe wanting to be a coach came up for you.
So I started coaching gymnastics when I was in 8th grade, and then coached all the way up through high school. Not so much in college, but then after college went back and coached it some more. So kind of along the lines of like coaching and teaching, it's always just, for me, has been just fun to like work with people and see and watch them grow. And so there had been kind of talk before you guys came over of like, what's happening with the gym? We knew there were changes being made. They were like looking for coaches, but it wasn't like necessarily out as to like what all they wanted. So I had started considering coaching, then was like, oh, well, if like they need somebody, maybe I could. And then the transition happened. And so it was always kind of in the back of my mind, but not something that I had ever like just bit the bullet and did. And then we were talking one night and I was like, all right, we're just going to do it. Like very spontaneous decision, but had been something that I had thought about before.
Yeah. And it's always funny because I feel like you never know all these stories or backgrounds with people, and knowing that you come from an education background and being a teacher, also having some gymnastics coaching in your background. Like there's a lot of people probably within the community who you don't realize could be fantastic coaches. And so having a lot of those experiences with gymnastics and even being a teacher, what were some of your early experiences getting on the floor then in terms of coaching CrossFit in front of a group setting here, especially like having been an athlete, and these are all the people you work out with, and now all of a sudden, like a year and a half later, you're like, oh, now I'm leading you and I'm coaching you. So what was that like?
It's definitely like an interesting shift, because it is like you're just used to like palling around with everybody and like doing your thing in the gym, and then you're like, okay, now I'm leading you and I need you to kind of take me seriously and trust that like I know what I'm talking about. And it's very different, like coaching kids versus coaching adults. So that was the shift that I was like, okay, I need to get comfortable with this, because with kids it's like, nope, I can demand that you respect me. And like, if you don't, there's going to be this consequence. Where it's like with adults, it's like, well, you kind of can make your own rules here. And I can't really tell you like, no, you can't do that. So I feel like with coaching adults, it's more like, I'm going to put out there, like, this is like what I recommend. Here's my expectations. But also I know that like, you're intelligent enough to be like, hey, you know what? That's not going to work for me today. And I'm going to do this instead. And like, great, let's have that conversation and move on. Especially I feel like Saturdays when there's some bigger classes and everybody's like chatting and whatnot, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be loud and put this out there. And if you want to follow it, great. And if you want to do your own thing, I'm going to accept that and we're going to move on.
Yeah. It is funny how the group that's in front of you does dictate how you show up as a coach, where it's like, you might have a class of like 5 to 8 people and you're like, I can really like get in the weeds and like, and all of a sudden you get 16 people come through for a class and you're just like, well, this changes things a little bit. And now it's like, I'm more in just maintenance mode of making sure everybody's moving in the right direction, everybody's safe, still trying to get everybody some cues and some ideas. So now you've had maybe 3 or 4 months under your belt. What do you think of where you're at now as a coach to even where you started, like that process?
I definitely feel like I'm a lot more confident and comfortable now with classes. It was nice because I started out with the 6:30 class, and that typically has been a smaller class. So it was like, okay, I can kind of get my feet wet. There's maybe only 3 or 4 people here. I can get to know them. And like you said, you can just kind of take your time more and do more coaching one-on-one when there is that smaller group setting. And then kind of as we've gone, I've done some Saturday classes, or if I have days off, can do like the 9 and noon classes. And so those tend to be the bigger classes. So then you're like, okay, all right, now it's managing, but trying to make sure like you're still getting in there and coaching when you can. So, I mean, there's always room for improvement. And I feel like it's been a journey of like being able to watch somebody and like know exactly like pinpointing like what correction do I need to give you. So that's something that I'm always continuing to work on and grow. And sometimes there's great opportunities for that because it's like, okay, we're doing 15 reps of this skill. And it's like, okay, I can watch you do 3. And by the third one, I can get it. When other times it's like, okay, if we're only doing 5 and like caught the last one you're doing, like, okay, let's move on to the next person and see if we can get it.
It's funny how it really is one of those where it just takes reps to get more confident in being able to manage the class, then see the people and make those corrections or those cues. But also then you just get a chance to build some relationships with people too, because there's always new faces and different journeys along the way. And so some of the things we always love learning from members are some of their favorite and least favorite things. So we'll go kind of two-sided here from an athlete perspective first. What are some of your favorite movements when you see them programmed, you get excited to go into the gym that day?
Muscle ups and handstand walks would be my favorite.
We don't get to do handstand walks a whole lot, but once in a while they're in there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, those are fun just because like I said, it's that gymnastics aspect of it. And I feel like sometimes those give me like a little edge over other people. And that's where like my competitive spirit comes out because I'm like, okay, well, I might not be able to beat them on like how fast I can do some of the barbell movements, but I can catch them on like the pull-ups or the muscle ups.
Yeah. Well, and when it comes to this idea of virtuosity of moving really well, you are great at demonstrating how efficient not only muscle ups but handstand walking can be, because like myself, like we've learned how to handstand walk with very incorrect form. So a lot of broken positions, knees and legs flying everywhere, and you're very just like prim and proper, perfect shape, like walking across. And it's funny to see people's faces too, and they're like, she's really good at that. I'm like, yeah, she's got a lot of experience, so that helps too. But
yeah.
So let's flip it then. Least favorite. So if something's programmed, what is one of your least favorite movements?
A lot of a heavy deadlift. I feel like everybody loves deadlifts, and I don't know if it's just because I'm like have long limbs. I have just always felt awkward doing them. Definitely they've gotten better, but for a long time it was like no matter what I did or how I was coached, I'd always wake up the next day with a backache, and I'm like, I'm clearly doing something wrong, but I don't know what. And like everybody's like, I don't know what's wrong. Like they look fine.
Yeah.
But so they've definitely gotten better. But for a while it was like my heaviest deadlift was only like 20 pounds heavier than my heaviest squat. And I'm like, that's probably not a good sign.
Well, you and I are two of a kind there, because that is how my lifts are as well. And I don't know why, but it's funny because based on your anatomy, I feel like you would be a fantastic deadlifter because you have really long arms. So it's like the barbell doesn't move very far. But yeah, I can vouch for that as well. So let's flip it then. As a coach now, what are some of your favorite movements to coach when you get a chance to?
Still love to coach the gymnastics movements. I just feel like that kind of stems from gymnastics too. Was used to coaching them in gymnastics, so now I feel like they transfer over to, okay, I know exactly what cues to give, and it's very easy for me to look at somebody and say, oh, this is what we're doing wrong. Like, let's try and fix this part. So I think it just comes more naturally because I've had more experience with it.
Yeah, and I think it's always helpful that we've got a lot of athletes who are right on the cusp of getting a muscle up or just starting to get maybe 1 or 2 under their belt. And it's nice to have a different set of eyes, perspective, even just different drills that people can use to practice to try and get better at them. So I think that's really fantastic as well. And then flip it. So any least favorite movements to coach when you see it programmed?
I don't feel like I'm very confident in coaching a bench press, which we don't do very often, but it's just a skill that like, I feel like even when you take the L1, like they don't really go over the bench press and different things like that. So I'm like, okay, like I'm going to take what I've heard and tell you guys it, but I can look at you and be like, yeah, I think you're doing that right. Just don't have the confidence there for that one yet.
Yeah. It is funny when like one of our coaches, Chris, is a big power lifter. And so he loves some of those core lifts. And when I start to hear people talk about it, who know it in much more detail than even I do, I'm like, there's a couple of basics. If they're good, we're good. Then all of a sudden you see him talking about hand placement and breaking the bar and breathing. I had no idea that's what I should be looking for with this movement. So it is fun. It's just, there's always something to learn, no matter what movement it is.
Yeah. There's been a few times where like we've had it in the workout and Chris has been there and I'm like, all right, I'm going to throw it over to Chris because he's got way better pointers for you than I do here.
Yeah. Well, it's been really fun having you both as athlete and as coach and seeing that journey and that progression. And so when you think about now, it's been a little over 2 years here, but What are some of the things that stand out to you that you've enjoyed about being part of greater culture as both athlete and even now as coach?
A few things is the community. Like, I just feel like everybody here is happy to be here and just so friendly, and you come in and you feel welcome. So that's definitely something that like I look for in a gym. Like, I don't want to just show up and do my workout and go home. Like, I want to feel like, hey, we're all here together and we're cheering each other on. And then the programming, I think, is great. I've been, like I said, this is my third gym now, and I feel like sometimes it's hard to get a good balance of all the aspects. And I feel like here we do quite a few strength pieces, a lot of technique work, and just like really good metcons and AMRAPs. So that's been awesome as well.
Yeah, it's fun to see progress. Because you didn't hit a PR yesterday, did you? Or was that a PR for you? That was a PR for you? Hitting a back squat PR at this stage? That's always fun.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
No.
Well, it's been fun getting to chat and catch up. Appreciate not only being an athlete, but also being a coach, bringing your expertise to the community here, and look forward to seeing what the next year has for you and Billy, especially as you continue along in your journey here. So thanks so much for being a guest on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.